Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for joining CareerInnovations Job Seeker Q&A session. I'm Bridget Bagg and I'm actually the founder of CareerInnovations. We are an executive search firm which was launched in 2007. We're actually a referral-based firm. We pride ourselves in innovative technologies and tools to locate some of the best talent for our clients. If this is your first time joining our Q&A session or any type of go-to webinar workshop, you can ask questions one of two ways depending on how you logged in. You can either raise your hand, I could unmute your line and you can verbally ask your question, or you can actually type your question in the chat box at the bottom and we can answer your question as we go through the workshop. And you don't have to wait until the end of the session to put your question in. As long as you have it in, we can definitely get to that before the session is over. Let me give you a little background about myself. One of my favorite quotes is, "I cannot teach anybody anything, I can only make them think." My passion is organizational change. I truly believe that the foundation of an organization starts with the culture, and that really is the company's core values. It's the foundation for attracting and retaining top talent. I also see as ourselves as innovators, not only as people that we try to find jobs for or companies we try to match candidates with, we also try to find ways to improve the job seekers' overall job search. So this is why we offer some of the programs that we offer, to give you a way to be able to find insight in finding new opportunities, or even finding your passion, which may not be your current place of employment. I did get 5 questions. That's why it's great to submit your questions. A lot of people don't submit the questions, which is fine, but it also gives us some type of foundation to build these Q&A sessions on. So again, the Q&A sessions change from week to week depending on the questions that are asked. 5 questions we got this week. All the questions were, one was, what are the best practices for working with recruiters? If there's a long career history, is it possible to be searching in more than one area? Our second question was, do you recommend trying to apply in person? Where is the best place to find job listings? Third question was advice for job seeking foreigners. Our fourth question was, how do we recent college graduates network via LinkedIn without coming off as desperate or bombarding? And the fifth question is, what is the best answer to provide when asked, what is the salary that you are to receive? And some of these questions definitely can have a direct answer to, and some of them may not be black and white as you think, and we're going to actually go into that as well. Working with recruiters. One thing you have to keep in mind when you're working with a recruiter or working with the agency, period. Unless you're working with a nonprofit or some type of governmental agency that's getting grant money or getting some back to work funds, most of the time agencies, recruiters, headhunters are working on the behalf of the employer, which means they also have to take in consideration how you as the applicant or potential employee will benefit the company. This is how they get paid and this is how they generate their revenue. And I say this because I'm going to go into some of the pros and cons of working with recruiters. And the question for this was actually working with recruiters, and it's okay to actually change industries or apply to multiple industries, or how does that look if you have experience in different industries? Should you apply to them all? Well, first let's look at the pros and cons of working with the recruiter. Beware when you do work with recruiters. You've heard stories in the past. I've actually heard stories where the relationship wasn't that great. But you also have to keep in mind that recruiters are very well connected. That is going to be your pro. You're going to be able to have connections that normally you wouldn't have on your own. You're going to be able to have access to things that normally you wouldn't have on your own as well. Another one, again, is one of the pros is access. But we also, I have hand in hand the cons, which is communication. A lot of times when you are working with the recruiter, and I've heard that some people say, well, I never heard back from the recruiter. I submitted my resume. I even had a phone interview and just never heard back with them. And that's why I made that statement at the beginning. Most of the time, recruiters are working on behalf of the company. And by no means am I making an excuse why they couldn't at least send you an email or pick up the phone to say, hey, we're moving on with other candidates, or give you some type of concrete reason why they didn't communicate. But in the same breath, they're working with sometimes 20, 30, 40 candidates at the same time, depending on if they're a high value firm. If that's the case, a lot of people or a lot of applicants get, they fall in the cracks, and they aren't communicated with. So that's one of the cons with working with, especially if you're working for a high volume recruiter, that there may be some sketchiness with the communication. The other con can be limited job access. If you're working with a recruiter that only recruits for a particular job or a particular niche, that's also going to be something that you're going to have to look at as well, that you may have limited jobs that they may, present to you, because again, you're not getting the full picture. You're only looking at a particular industry or niche that recruiter particular recruits for. So you also want to take a look at, make sure that you're not limiting yourself with just a particular job or a particular industry. Another pro is that it's going to save you time. Again, I've known people that they spend their whole day or whole weekend just applying to jobs. Usually, if you're working with a good recruiter, and again, it goes back to all recruiters aren't created equal. You have your good ones, you have your mediocre ones, and you have some that shouldn't even be in the industry. So it really depends on if that recruiter or that headhunter is actually going to save you time by doing some of that work to help you find a position, or at least make that type of bridge of communication with the decision maker. A con is they can be impersonal. And that's one thing I see a lot of candidates talk about, is that, it's almost as if they didn't care. It's not that they didn't care. A lot of times they have so much on their plate, and they're working with so many employers that they're trying to keep the employer happy, because guess what? It goes back to how they make their revenue. So even though you may be in a position where you don't know where to go, I have some that reach out to me about career counseling and career planning, and at the end of the day, I'm not a career coach. It's not that I'm not sympathetic to what you're going through, is that can also, we can also turn into social workers. And I remember one of my colleagues say that they say, you can become a social worker if you took on everybody's issues they came to you, in which why they weren't finding a job or they wanted to make a career change. So you also have to say that some recruiters can be pretty much uncandy coded, straight to the point, and that can come off as very impersonal. And again, if you're working with a good recruiter, you can actually have them be your advocate. And that's one thing that you really want to look at. You can have a recruiter, voice their opinion on, hey, this candidate I'm working for is making this amount of money. Is no way they're going to take this. And I've actually done this with some of the candidates I work for. I could be an advocate for them to let them know that, this is where this person stands, and I don't see them taking this, or I don't see them, pursuing this position if it doesn't align with their overall career goals. So you want to make sure that you're working with a recruiter or an agency that definitely can be your advocate. And again, the con can be a lengthy process. It shouldn't be, especially if they're working with a company that there's some sense of urgency. It shouldn't be a long, drawn-out process, but I've seen some that have turned into a very lengthy process as well. So that can be a con. And I know one of the questions was being able to apply to multiple industries or sectors under different titles. Beware of applying to different titles and different sectors. You can definitely come off as desperate. You can also come off as very unfocused on your career goals. It can be interpreted as a person that's a job hopper, or someone that's just simply buying time. And what I mean by that, it can be someone that, really going to take this position until something better comes along. Or I'm interviewing for this position. I don't know if I have it, but since I have this offer on the table, I'll take it and see where this one goes. It's someone that's just buying time. Example, myself in HR, human resources. Of course, I can go to various industries. I can be I can be in recruiting for the healthcare industry. I can, do HR recruiting for IT, et cetera, et cetera. You know, my expertise or HR background did not change. But if I decide to go into like a sales role or to pursue something totally different, but keep in mind, I may have the experience, because I'm selling all day. I have the experience to do that, but it just comes off as a jack of a trade, master of none. I know everyone heard that phrase before, jack of all trades and master of none, and you don't want to come off as, I can do that, let me apply to this, let me apply to that. It just comes off as someone that really doesn't have a focus on what they want to do on a long-term basis. So you definitely want to keep that in mind when you do decide to apply to multiple jobs with different titles. Though you may have the experience, someone may perceive it totally different. Let's move on to our next question about job listings. A person asked about job listings and applying in person if they're unable to follow up. And I said job listings is not a real issue. In fact, many may say there's too many job listings. You can easily access niche boards or job listings per industry. Nowadays, even though you have the big five, your Career Builder, Monster, Simply Hire, LinkedIn, Indeed, you have your major 5 or 6 job boards. There are a lot of niche boards out there that a lot of people don't know about, and it's just simply Googling that niche. I know some, in IT, some people look for developer jobs, and there's a job board dedicated just to developer jobs. Some that, I'm a CPA or an accountant. There's a job board out there, beyond the 5 job boards I named that just posts CPA and accounting jobs. So you really have to look beyond just the major job boards. A lot of employers are starting to use niche boards because it's a laser focus. They're able to get the candidates without having to go through a whole lot of fluff and a whole lot of unqualified personnel trying to get to that one diamond in the rough. So a lot of employers are starting to invest in using niche boards because they know this is what this board is for. Only people with this experience applies to this particular job board. So this is where I'm going to post this job. So you definitely want to think outside the box and just don't look at Indeed and Simply Hire. Don't get me wrong, there's some great jobs out there, but there's also other jobs as well that are posted on niche boards from companies that, may not be the Fortune 500 companies, but definitely are some great companies that are using niche boards. So you want to look at that as well. Applying in person and unable to follow up was the second part of this. And I already addressed the job listings. I don't think that's the issue. Job listings just take some time on your part to get online and Google niches and look for those job boards. I really think it boils down to this. If you're applying online, and this goes for anyone on the line, if you're applying online and you haven't been contacted by phone or to set up some type of phone screen or some face-to-face or even just a minute of your time, you want to take a time to unplug just for a second and look at some other alternatives. And what I mean by that, everybody is using that resource. Everybody's applying online, so you have a lot of competition on there. And I can tell you, majority of the people that are applying online, many employers aren't even looking at. They just don't have the manpower to look at 500, 700, 800 resumes. They just don't have it. So your best bet is, back to the basics. Networking. Attending events that are going to bring you closer to your goal. That means requesting informational interviews, lunch, coffee. Find a way to connect to people in your industry. You want to start reaching out, Get out your comfort zone. And reaching out means picking up the phone and reaching out to potential people, which I call leads, that can point you in the right direction. Not everyone that you're going to call is going to give you a yes. You know what I mean? They're not. But they definitely can point you to somebody that can. You know, don't just rely on online job boards to do this. You know, next thing you want to do is follow up. If you are getting those interviews, even if you're connecting with decision makers on LinkedIn, I know a lot of people that I've actually looked at their connections. I'm like, why haven't you reached out to this person? This person is the operations director of the company that you applied to. Why haven't you reached out to her? This is your first connection. I'm pretty sure if you interview for this job, this director of operation is going to be part of the hiring process, because you're going to be directly under this person. Everyone is accessible, and I know when someone said they're unable to follow up, I probably need a little bit more information to figure out why aren't you able to follow up with someone, because nowadays in 2014, everyone is accessible. There's no reason why you should not be able to follow up with either the companies directly or the recruiters. Technology has made this a pretty straightforward task. Basically, it's just going to get you to that yes or no quicker. That's really what it's all about. Because once you can get the no's out the way, you can get to those yeses. And I know if you're applying strictly to Fortune 500 companies, and I actually did a workshop on this, everyone's going after the huge companies, and they're not even seeing these smaller companies that may not be a household name have some awesome opportunities there that people are overlooking because they want those Fortune 500. They're only applying to these Fortune 500 companies, and guess what? So is everyone else in the U.S. and globally. So why, not to say don't apply to them, but why not also look at the smaller to medium-sized companies? And I've actually had some people entertain startups that have some great funding, great benefits, and they find out, this is a long-term career path. And a lot of times these startups grow into great executive level positions, so also weigh your pros and cons in there. And then you also want to reflect. If you've done everything on this list, you networked, you reached out, you followed up, you really should take a minute to reflect and review your efforts. You need to figure out what is working, what is wasting your time. There's a lot of people just applying to positions online, and you're not understanding why aren't these people calling me back? What makes you a competitive candidate? What is it that makes you competitive, or what is it that your competition has that you may be lacking? You seriously need to take a look at this. This is the time to be honest with yourself. If I'm applying to these positions, and I'm not getting callbacks, somebody is. Somebody's getting these roles. Figure out what's holding you back. Is it education? Is it experience? Are you applying to positions that are way out of your league? Now, I had someone that were applying to VP and executive roles, and don't get me wrong, you had managerial experience, but most of the time these executive roles, they want 15, 20 years of experience. So sometimes a lot of people are using the rope to hang themselves, applying to positions they aren't qualified for. Yeah, you applied to 200 positions last month, but how many of those positions really matched your background? So you really want to be honest with yourself and take a real time to reflect and see, okay, what do I need to do to make myself more competitive? What is my competition doing to make themselves competitive? And what do I need to do to compete? That's what you need to do. So don't focus so much on the job listings, on where can I find job listings. You really want to focus on what can I do to make myself stand out, and how do I get in touch with the people that make that decision. That's what you want to do at the end of the day. My next question I had, advice for job-seeking foreigners. This question I really wasn't real sure, because this pretty much was the questions. It really didn't go into detail on what you wanted to know about foreigners that were looking for employment. I wasn't even sure if you were looking for employment in the U.S. or, globally, because it didn't give me a location of where you were. All I can tell you about job seeking foreigners is you have three things that are against you when you're looking for a job, and if you're foreign, and don't. And excuse me if I'm totally off with this, because like again, I didn't get a lot of information, so I don't know if you are a citizen that has a sponsorship here, like you're sponsored by a company here, or do you actually have a green card that you're legally able to work for any employer here? So the three things that I see that's a problem with, and especially if I'm working for companies, the first thing they look at is sponsorship. Not all companies have the ability to sponsor individuals. First and foremost, it's expensive. Not to say they don't want, they don't want the expertise, is that sometimes a company just doesn't have the budget to sponsor a an employee that may not be a U.S. citizen. It has nothing to do with you. It's just sometimes they don't have the budget to do that. And again, there's fees involved. It's cost behind sponsoring an employee. Another one is the network. A lot of foreigners that do work here and they do want to decide to branch out, their network may be limited. A lot of them may have small networks, so that can also be something that holds them back. The third thing is access. Many employees that are foreigners that work here that may not be working here on a green card basis or as a U.S. citizen or working on a sponsorship, and makes them difficult to find another job, because most of the time sponsored employees are only limited to the employer that sponsored them, which means that if I'm a company and I sponsored you, you're only authorized to work for my company, which makes it hard for you to go out and find another company to work for unless they're going to sponsor you. Or unless the visa that you're working on, it has the expiration of 2018, 2019, where you have a little leeway to work here and find another company that will take over that sponsorship. So those are the three things that you have to consider. And the advice I can give you on that is finding a company. If you don't have a sponsor, finding companies, and you can do this with find attorneys that deal with immigration, employment law. You can Google this in your area. Attorneys that deal with employment law for immigration. These are the ones that actually prep up the paperwork for the companies that do the sponsorships. I actually went to it was an exhibit where it was a whole lot of HR and human resources, and there was a couple attorneys there that's their niche. That's all they do is deal with sponsorships, H-1B visas, and that's all they did was prepare the paperwork for the companies. So if you can reach out to attorneys with that niche, they know the companies that deal with sponsorships. They know the companies that hire and have the capital to sponsor employees. That would be my first advice to you, is find companies that do sponsorship if you're looking for a sponsorship. If you're not, I will work on your network, and I will work on your access to different resources, as far as to networking events, reaching out to people in your industry. Pretty much the same thing that anybody else would do that was a job seeker. But the first thing is to work on your network and work on reaching out to the decision makers if sponsorship is not an issue for you. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I didn't get a lot of information on what type of advice they have. At the end, if you're on the line, I have my email address. You can definitely email me, and I can send you some resources of attorneys I know that work strictly with foreigners and work strictly with sponsorships and visas for work. I definitely can send you that information. Advice for new grads. This question is, how do we, as recent college grads, network via LinkedIn without coming across as desperate and bombarding? Okay, the first thing you want to do is leverage your existing relationships, as far as not only LinkedIn but social media, period. And a lot of people don't take this seriously when they're in college. It kind of hits them when they finish. First thing, if you haven't graduated yet, but I'm thinking you have since you're a new graduate or a recent college grad, You should have took some existing relationships or introductions from past internships that you've done. I know a lot of new grads that internships turned into permanent positions. I also would start reaching out to executives to have informational interviews. Informational interviews are great because it's not anything for a particular position. It's kind of a warm introduction and tell me more about your company. And you also want to find some type of mentor. And I think this is great for new grads because it doesn't come off as awkward. You're young, you're trying to get your feet wet, you're trying to get your foot in the door in the industry. So nothing's wrong with reaching out to somebody that you can pick their brain and you can actually do some type of mentorship. And a mentor, it doesn't have to be, I have to meet up with this person every week. It can be a simple check-in call. Hey, you can find someone on LinkedIn or find someone in your network that, hey, you mind if I reach out to you once a week just to see, to see what you're doing or see what the industry's and what the industry's doing or see about this particular career I'm trying to pursue and can I have some type of accountability coach that I can reach out to? And some people call it that. Instead of a mentor, they call it an accountability coach. Someone that they can reach out to on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. You want to be able to have this somewhere in your plan so you're not relying heavily on sending out requests on LinkedIn, because sometimes people can get turned off if they just get all these requests from people they don't know. So that's why I say you want to first leverage your existing network, and your existing network can be anyone that you've done an internship with, that you've done anything like that with. You also want to, you also want to be able to find reasons to connect, which means that if that includes, I'm reaching out to you to, find out more information about your company, and that's also keeping up with current events. This is the best way to find a mentor, or at least find some type of preceptorship or informational interview, is to keep up with the company's trends. If you have your eye on a company, the best thing you can do is give them information about their company that just was current. It's nothing more, revealing to know that, hey, we're on the map. You can tell me something. So that means you don't want to just go to the website and just read the About Us. The About Us may have been on there for 10 years now. You want to find newsletters. You want to find news releases. You want to find anything like that that's going to be very current to show, hey, what are they doing? What are some of the things that they're working on? Who are their main competitors? What are they hiring for? And you have to remember, new grads, if I have any new grads on the line, people are hiring people to solve a problem. At the end of the day, that's why companies are putting money into employees. They're not hiring you just for you to make a living. They hire you to solve a problem, so you have to bring a solution to the table. What are you going to solve at that organization? If you're applying for a marketing job, how are you going to be able to solve their marketing problem? Are you going to increase their profits? Okay, if you are, how are you going to do it? Are you going to be able to do business development? Okay, what is your plan to bring in new business? So when they have positions out, that's one thing you have to take in consideration. They're hiring you to solve a problem. You have to become a solution. And I talk about this on some of my workshops. Selling yourself doesn't work. You have to sell a solution, because at the end of the day, they want to hire someone that's going to solve a problem, whether it's you or the guy behind you. They want the person that's going to solve the problem. So selling yourself, it works to a certain extent, but they also want to be able to hire that person that's going to be able to solve the reason why that job position's open. And it could care less about, what you can bring to the table, far as, what's in it for you. They want to know what's in it for me, what's in it for our organization. What are you going to provide to solve our problem? So you definitely want to be able to do that. So get a mentor, Reach out to get some informational interviews going on to your existing network, and look at it if you haven't already. Look at internships. I call them, if it's after you graduate, I call it preceptorships. And I've actually had preceptorships way after I graduated, and it's actually shadowing. I did volunteer work, and I actually shadowed someone. It wasn't on a day-to-day basis. It was, probably I got so many hours in, or preceptorship in. It was actually for a certification, and built relationships, and actually was able to work with people within the organization and made a name for myself just off of preceptorship. So you definitely want to look into preceptorships, internships, building that mentor, job shadowing, and also make sure you're keeping up your employable skills. So definitely look into that as well. Next question is the salary question. This is my last question, that I'm going to open the line up for questions because we're getting close to a quarter till, and I like to leave about 10-15 minutes open for questions that weren't submitted prior to the session. The salary question is, what's the best answer to provide when asked what is the salary that you are to receive? And tell you the truth, I asked this question. And I asked this question not to be nosy or not to see, how much you make or how much you want to make or how you're going to inflate your current salary. It's really, you really want to be honest, because nowadays employers can find out what you make. All it takes is a W-2 form. Let's be totally honest. It's not anything that's top secret. They can find out easily through a W-2 form. You also want to be honest and upfront about that, and I tell you why. I'll tell you why in step 3. Another reason why this question is asked is a screening tool. I ask this question because I don't want to waste anyone's time. And the reason why I don't want to waste anyone's time is that if I'm asking you how much you make, and I know this position makes so much money and this is their cap and this is all they're going to pay, and you're making $20,000 or $30,000 more than that, and I know the company is no way, shape, or form going to match that, it's a way to screen and say, hey, this is how much they're offering. You're here, and more than likely a person's not going to, it's not far-fetched. People have done it, but 9 times out of 10, someone's not going to take a $30,000 pay cut. So it's also a way to not waste your time. I don't want to have you go through a whole lengthy hiring process just to find out it's paying you $30,000 or $40,000 less than what you're currently making. So it's a way to screen, and that's the way I use it. I want to get it out the way and let you know, hey, this is how much it's paying. Where are you at? Because I don't want to waste your time knowing that you make either way too much and they're not going to be able to match it, and now I've just wasted a week of your time for a position that at the end of the day you're not going to take it. You're not going to take a $30,000 pay cut. So that's also a way. On the other end, if your salary is low, and a lot of people say, well, I'm not in that statistic where I have such a high salary that I'm turning it down. I'm in a position where my salary is low, and I don't want them to lowball me or say that maybe I'm underqualified because my salary is low. You can use this as leverage. Use the and I've seen people use their salary or their low salary or as reasons why they're looking for a new job. Hey, yeah, my salary is probably 10 or 15 grand below average or below U.S. average, but hey, this is the reason why I'm also looking for another position. I feel that I'm grossly underpaid, and I really need a position that's going to put me on what the average salary is for my background, my education, and my experience I can bring to the table. So a lot of times I've seen people use that question and leverage it to their benefit. Hey, this is the reason why I'm looking for a job. My salary is low. This is the reason why I'm getting out. This is the reason why I'm reaching out to you or applied to your company. Because I want a competitive salary. This is how much I make. So, and that also shows that you've done your homework. It shows that, you kind of have a general idea of what you should be making, compared to the national average. So you definitely want to use that. So to answer your question, first and foremost, you want to be honest, because nowadays people have ways to find out how much you brought home. It's like I said, as simple as a W-2. That includes your base plus your commission or anything that you pay taxes on. So, really doesn't benefit you to lie about it. Um, Again, they can use it as a screening tool, or in your case, if it's low, you can use it as leverage and use that. That's why the reason why you're looking for employment elsewhere. So I hope that answers your question. My last slide is my contact information. My email is my first initial last name at Career-Innovate. I do have some upcoming workshops that if you're interested in, just keep an eye on the website, or log on to our website and sign up for our newsletter, and we send our workshops out on a monthly, twice a month, once a month basis, so you'll know what's coming out, a calendar that we have. Again, we're found on all the social media. Again, this will be posted on YouTube, so you can access it as well. And right now I'm going to open the line up for any questions. If you have any questions, definitely raise your hand, or type it at the bottom, and I do see some questions already typed at the bottom. And let me open this up to see. Okay, first question is, I have a question, how to construct an elevator speech. Okay, then I have another one, same person, I'm wondering what's the best way to connect to recruiters. Okay, elevator speech, and actually, if you ever go to the YouTube and take a look at, I don't know if it was last week or the week before that, I talked about the elevator speech. At the end of the day, when you construct the elevator speech, it should be some type of call to action involved. And I've heard elevator speeches that just for 30 seconds, me, they just ramble about themselves. Your elevator speech should definitely be talking about what you can bring to the table and what you can actually do. Okay, so you want to be able to actually have an elevator speech that gives a brief introduction of yourself, but you also want it to actually close with some type of call to action, which means, when can I follow up? How can I reach you? Can I get your contact information? Can we set up a time to connect? That's what I think an elevator speech should be. And I've heard elevator speeches that just strictly, it sounds like they're just rattling off something out, that they memorized off the top of their head. You want to make this engaging. You want to make this unscripted. Even I know a lot of people, write this and script this out, but you wanted to have it come out very natural, as if you're carrying a very casual conversation. And at the end of the day, you should have somewhere where what solutions that you implemented for past organizations, and you also should have some type of close. It should be closing, and again, the closer should be, getting contact information, setting up a time to reach out. It should have some type of closer in there. So what's the point of giving an elevator speech if you're not going to be able to close the person and have some type of further engagement, prior to your elevator speech? And I've seen a lot of elevator speech does not have any type of closers on it. It's not closing the person or actually getting the person to have some type of call to action, to answer that question. Best way to reach out to recruiters, should I approach recruiters? Best way to reach out to recruiters is actually see if they're recruiting for a position that you're interested in. That would be my first line of defense, because as a recruiter, I get requests all day and all night, and some of the people that reach out to me, I don't recruit for their industry. I don't have any positions, never recruited for the positions they're looking for. Yes, we have to stay in contact. It's better for you to reach out to recruiters that recruit in your industry and have a position that you actually can talk about, because that's going to be your icebreaker when you reach out to them. So if you're trying to connect with a recruiter, then say you're in the logistics industry and this recruiter just does logistics, that's going to be your icebreaker. Hey, my background's in logistics. I see you have multiple positions in it. Hey, can we set up a time to talk, or can you take a look at my background and see, if this matches any of the positions that you're currently working on? So you want to find a way that you can have some way to have that first initial contact. And usually that first initial contact can be something that they need. And at the end of the day, they're not out there just, trying to talk to people just to talk to them. Again, as we went back to working with recruiter, they're in this for the client, for the company. That's how they make their money. So if you come with them and potentially can be be a benefit, because you can actually fill a position they're working on, they're going to be more inclined and more receptive to network with you and to connect with you because, hey, potentially they can see placing you somewhere. So that would be my first initial contact to connect with a recruiter, is find someone that's recruiting in the industry that you're trying to get in or that you have experience in, and go from there. Okay, and I think, do I have any more questions? I think I answered all the questions. I don't see any more questions out here. And hopefully I was able to answer, I think, this was the second part of the question. Should I approach recruiters differently than a potential employer? Um, No, not really. I don't mean to by approach with you because either way you want to be very professional and give it your best, regardless if you're talking to a recruiter or that decision maker. Because again, the recruiter has the power to influence the decision maker. So I definitely wouldn't approach them any differently. And that's the same way for an employer. If you see an employer that's hiring for a particular position and you want to connect with them, I definitely would use that as leverage. Hey, I see that you're recruiting, or I see that you have a position in this role, and I think I'd be a perfect fit. Do you mind if we connect and see if this is something that definitely can bring your organization value? So you definitely want to use your background and what you can bring to the table as leverage to answer your question. Okay, I don't see any more questions. If you do have any questions and you do want to send me an email, you definitely can. My contact information is right here. Take that down. If you want to review this again, you can definitely go on YouTube and do so. After this workshop, there is a survey. It's only 10 questions, multiple choice, and some that you actually type in. It really just evaluates the Q&A session, tells us some things that we need to work on, gives us constructive criticism and feedback, but also gives us insight on workshops that you'll like to see in the future. Also, if you have any topics that you'd like to talk about or questions, definitely put that in there so we can plan for the next workshop, which is next Monday. Again, thank you so much for your time. Have a great night. Bye-bye.